What's the most out of touch thing you've heard a person say? Why are you still living at home at 23? Just buy a house. Coming from someone whose parents bought her a house. I'm 30 and living back at home for a year. Finally going to be moving out with 4 friends so we can afford renting a house. One of us is an engineer and I work in IT and we can't really afford places on our own. Oh man, I'm just jealous you have 4 friends at 30. Have a friend whose wealthy parents paid for his schooling, his rent, his startup, his car, and his down payment. He asked when we were finally going to buy a house because renting is such a waste of money. Why don't you live on disability? As a response to disabled people complaining about local government cutting back programs designed for making gainful employment accessible, I work with disabled adults. This is a bigger problem than most people realize. He told me, as long as you're dating someone better looking than you, you're going to have to get used to me being hit on, or having something on the side. You're going to have to date an ugly guy for that loyalty shit. Of all the insanity of this quote, the thing that gets me is the casual equating of something that cannot be controlled, me being hit on, with the opposite, me having someone on the side. It's like, look, as long as we live in an area with a lot of flowers, sometimes I'm going to get allergies, or murder people. Love it when toxic people tell you that you have to get used to, or deal with their toxicity. I don't understand why you bother renting an apartment. Just buy a house. My dad, who hadn't purchased a house since 1993, my advice to my younger colleagues is to buy a house in the year 2000, like I did. They don't seem to appreciate it. Kids these days. Edit. Also, more free advice. Buy Apple stock in the 1980s. Trust me on this. Recently got a new job that paid double what I used to make. When I resigned, my former boss told me, money isn't everything. LOL. I was only making minimum wage before. As a friend once said, money can't buy happiness, but I find that it makes misery so much more comfortable. I don't know why you would go to a community college when you can go to a university, said by a high school guidance counselor, giving a lecture on college admissions essays and applications in my senior AP English class. After I asked naively if there's anything I had to do for community college. Turns out, I had other classmates in the same boat who wanted to know too, but felt too embarrassed to ask. Anyways, I went to community college to get my prerequisites out of the way and got my associate's degree. Then, transferred into university for a competitive nursing program. I saved money from those first 2 years in community college. Didn't get a loan until I got into uni. F that guidance counselor. The company owes you nothing. You owe the company everything. My boss, after I worked for 4 years in the company, I used to work for a guy who owned a temporary employment agency. I once watched him berate his 2 $7 an hour receptionists because his monthly income from the business had dropped from $40,000 to $25,000. And they had nothing whatsoever to do with how much money the business made. They were freaking receptionists. I was telling my boss how proud I was my husband got a new job. He's legally blind. And she proceeds to tell me that she wishes she had a disability so she could just get handed a job. Had to walk away from that one. I could arrange that, bitch. Whoa, what an arsehole thing to say. I don't think I could have held back. Who is your chocolatier? Okay, I need to know the context for this one, if you'd care to share it. I was at an open house, looking for a new property, and 2 women were discussing their favorite restaurants. One asked this question, and I remembered that some people just live such different lives. Whoa, imagine being able to drop that line unironically, with a straight face. You're right, some people just live exceedingly different lives than the rest of us. I was working at a school for the kids of the 1%, and we were discussing what a millionaire was. One example I gave was owning property or assets worth $1 million or over, and the kid replied, "Oh, so everyone is a millionaire then? There's some privilege showing there, but people do have a misconception about millionaires being the ultra wealthy elites, when in today's market, if you own a pretty decent house, a couple of vehicles, and have a retirement savings, you're probably a millionaire. Had a friend in dental school who grew up in the rich suburbs north of Detroit. We were talking about traveling. She was going to Thailand for spring break, and she said, "I'd be surprised if most people hadn't traveled to at least 20 countries." I told her, I'd be surprised if most people had ever left the US at all. Edit. For all those wondering, she is from Bloomfield Hills. To be rich enough to travel to at least 20 countries. I haven't even visited 20 states. My dad just died about a month ago. My company gave me 4 days and paid off. I was really close to my father, so this was hard for me to deal with. My paycheck was enough to pay bills, but I had to buy my groceries on credit card to get by. My boss's brother-in-law died the following week. All he talks about is how hard this is on his wife. Between the stress of her brother dying and the reno on their $1 million cabin, he's taking his whole family to Hawaii for 10 days this month to try to deal with their grief. Meanwhile, I'm pricing urns out on Amazon to try to save money, trying to sell my dad's tools to help my mum, working full-time and taking care of a toddler. I'm so sorry for your loss. Hang in there. Also, your boss is a dick. If you can't afford gas, buy an electric vehicle. Ha ha ha, this one kills me. Like, yeah, you know what, Jim? I can't afford the $100 of gas. I better go buy a $60,000 plus electric vehicle. Aren't you a bit too old to have a grandma? A neighbor. When I told her my grandma just passed away, wish I could have seen her face. If you'd said, well, as of yesterday, I guess I am. I actually said, well, I don't have one anymore, and she didn't really react. Naturally, I'm still upset. It still hurts, and this woman still doesn't get it. I avoid her now. During a break room discussion on how one of my coworkers was having to go on food stamps because the job didn't pay enough, the new CEO, who, for the first and last time, decided to have lunch in the break room, dropped this gem. Yeah, I know what you mean. We had to let our second nanny go. Africa's a country, in front of an Ethiopian, who insisted that Africa's a continent. This, and those puzzled people, who meet African immigrants and wonder if they are hungry, thirsty, or are surprised or impressed that they know what civilization is.